Podcast start!
This is one of Scott's special moves where he talks inanely into a microphone for 90 minutes.
Hello and welcome to the Doofcast, the official variety podcast of doofmedia.com. My name is Scott Daly and I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Matt Freeman. Matt, how is it going this week?
It's going great, Scott. I am thrilled to be talking about anime this week.
You know what? So am I.
That's so weird.
Weirdly enough. Yes, this week on the show, we are doing another one of our patron-produced episodes, which is rapidly just being the times we watch anime.
Yep.
For those of you that don't know, folks who pledge to us at the Doof Warrior level on Patreon, that's patreon.com/doofmedia, Doof Warrior and above, I guess now, get to select either a movie or a TV show for us to do an episode on, depending on what level they donate at. This week, we have our patron AzgarZigel, who asked us to take a look at the anime series Mob Psycho 100. We have watched the first season of the show, and we'll be discussing all 12 episodes of the show, and it'll be full spoilers for all 12 episodes. So we recommend you guys take a look at this thing before you listen to this, or, you know, just spoil yourself and then go check it out. Where is it available again? I watched it on that Crunchyroll thing.
I don't know. I mean, I watched it on Crunchyroll too. That was pretty painless, actually.
I mean, it cost money, but
right.
Free trial.
Yeah, free trial. I don't know where else it would be available, but yeah, I mean, spoiler for this show: Scott has been possessed by a spirit, an anime spirit.
That's the only logical explanation. Yeah, so we're going to be talking about Mob Psycho 100, and that's all we got for this week. We're just going to spend an hour or so really breaking down the show and talking about, oddly enough, why I liked it so much.
Yeah.
So let's just waste no further time and jump right into Mob Psycho 100.
He is an Esper, blessed with psychic abilities. A great schooler called Mob by those around him. Working as an assistant for a psychic at 300 yen an hour.
You're Mob, and you are a student of the new star of the paranormal world, Reigen.
Even though these tremendous powers have been bestowed upon him, subconsciously, he's always avoided displaying these abilities.
Psychic powers don't make a man appealing. So in order to change this aspect of myself, I joined the Body Improvement Club.
As he grew older and became more aware, he came to realize just how dangerous his powers were. While attempting to spare the world around him, Mob's aversion to using his powers has become a complex. The emotions locked away deep inside his heart expand little by little, moment by moment. However, there's a limit to how much his emotions can take before leaking out and going wild.
So before we talk about my overall thoughts, I want to hear yours. What did you think of this show? Actually, let's summarize. Let's say what the show is first. I guess.
Sure. So Mob Psycho 100 is a 2016 anime series based on a manga series of the same name created by One. It tells the story of a middle school boy named Mob, who is a powerful Esper, a psychic, under the tutelage of a powerful fraud named Reigen.
Yeah, and I think One is the same guy who does One Punch Man, right? I think.
Okay, I don't know about that.
I think that's a pen name or a pseudonym for a manga artist and creator. Who also did One Punch Man.
It seems a bit similar to what I know of One Punch Man, even though I haven't watched it. And that actually makes me want to watch One Punch Man a little bit more because
God, me too.
Because basically it seems a bit similar conceptually, but with a certain twist. And we know that this guy's absolutely hilarious. So yeah.
Yeah, so Matt, overall thoughts, Mob Psycho 100 season 1. What'd you think?
I thought it was great. Like I was almost immediately won over just by the humor and the tone of it, like the way it doesn't really take itself seriously, but it manages to have a message as well. I mean, I think that's always really fun when something is both lighthearted and very light, and also kind of brings home an emotional message that it's trying to land. And I mean, I have a lot of good things to say actually, so it's going to take some time to dig into it. But yeah, very positive impression overall. So yeah, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of spoiled it a little bit already, but I was very surprised at how much I enjoyed this thing. I mean, there's still definitely moments in it where anime is going to anime, and I was rolling my eyes, and I really also still think that had I not been asked to watch this, I would have bounced off of it in like the first 5 minutes. But being forced to sit down and watch it, I was pleasantly surprised at how much this worked on me. I think the sense of humor is a big part of it. Like you said, I think we're going to spend some time on that. I think the overall conceit and the simplicity of the conceit is something that I really want to get into, because I think that's one thing that this show does. Because basically, when I realized I was liking this, the first thing I start doing is like, okay, why this and not any of that other shit I've watched, right? Like that's the first question I ask myself is like, why am I enjoying this? What's going on here? What is this doing? Or what is the other stuff? What did the other stuff not do to make it so I can not only like but tolerate this? And the other stuff, like I've described anime as like nails on a chalkboard for me. There were definitely some eye-rolly moments for me in the series, but none of it was excruciating like nails on a chalkboard. So
yeah, I hope we really nail down why we liked it so much. And I mean, so I guess my first foray into that would just be sort of the null hypothesis of why you like things, or why I like things, which is
Sure.
which is realistic and relatable characters.
Yeah.
And I found that to be true much more than I find in most anime. Like we just watched
Code Geass.
Code Geass, and that was one where like I just could not connect to any of the characters. That they all seem to be just, I think I used the word like weird aliens. And I have this problem a lot with anime where I just feel like I can't psychologically connect to the characters because I fundamentally don't think that their arcs are realistic. But I mean, arc is even too generous of a word. I don't think anything about them is realistic. But in this show, like every character who isn't just a joke character is relatable and has an emotional core that you can understand. And even the ones that are joke characters aren't just joke characters. Like they're usually making some kind of interesting point through their existence, that they're not just thrown in as fluff. They're usually there to draw some kind of counterpoint to what's going on with the character. So, you talked about the art style a little bit. I think the art style is pretty unusual, and I guess one thing that I might say is that not only does this anime poke fun at the visual and the narrative tropes of anime in general. I mean, it uses them, but it also kind of uses them to comedic effect often. But it also sort of pokes fun at the thematic tropes that you see a lot in anime. Like, I mean, the chosen one bullshit is something that is in all shonen, basically all anime that's kind of aimed at the younger age group in general, men and women, really, boys and girls. And this has Mob as the chosen one, but it's like every single possible opportunity to turn that on its head and do something interesting with it is taken. And I think that is a big part of why I like this a lot.
Yeah, you said a lot there, and I kind of want to break down each one of those things, because I completely agree with you, and I think the ways in which it does these things is really fascinating and worth talking about. I kind of want to go back to the first thing you said about the characters,
sure,
and I completely agree with you. I think Mob is this really relatable, fascinating character. I think even Reigen, who is almost played as a joke for most of the series, and then suddenly comes back to being like actually this really like nice, surprisingly nice, caring dude.
Yeah.
That, I mean, like, we'll talk specifically about the final episode, but what the show manages to do with the character in that final episode, that final moments of the season, I was like, holy shit, that I was not expecting that from the show at all. But it pulls it off. And what's more, it feels earned. It feels like a thematic payoff to everything that was going on. But when I look centrally at like, okay, why do I like these characters? Why are these characters better established and better related than a lot of the other anime I've watched? I go back to that thing I said at the beginning, which is this idea of simplicity, right? The simplicity of conceit. That's one thing that really kind of bugs me about a lot of anime, is they make their world so complicated and so difficult to parse and understand that you don't have time to really establish your characters very well because you're so busy trying to explain the world and the rules of the world. And I think Code Geass was actually a perfect example of that in this thing where for the first 4 episodes, I'm just struggling to grab and understand as much of the world as I possibly can. Whereas the first episode, it's basically just like, all right, so in this world, people have psychic powers and they're like demons and stuff, and then they fight them. And Mob is this little middle schooler that works for a guy who's obviously a fraud. The end. And that's it. And then like world established, let's focus on the characters then. And I mean, and I'm not going to sit here and say like simple is always better. I don't think it is. I think I like complex stories at times, but in this case, I really do feel like the simplicity of this idea just allows the show to focus on the things it wants to focus on, which are these characters.
Yeah, I think that's exactly true. And I mean, it's interesting because what I'm about to say could sound like a contradiction to what you have just said, but I think that it is not a contradiction because basically I'm going to list all the plot threads of this story, and here's the list. Okay, we've got power hungry middle school hall monitor kid. We've got gang war between schools. We've got the body improvement club thread. We've got the telepathy club thread. We've got the school newspaper girl who keeps wanting to interview Mob. We've got the Slimer ghost and everything related to the Slimer ghost. We've got exorcisms with Reigen, which are kind of peppered throughout.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you mean exorcisms?
Exorcisms, yep.
I love how he said exorcism. Every single time I laughed. Every single time.
Oh, my God.
I guess I could exorcise him.
Then we've got Reagan's other various scams. We've got the conflict with the scars that builds up toward the end, and the relationship and conflict with Mob and his brother. And I probably missed something too. So the reason I list all those, and you just said it's very simple. The thing is, it is very simple because all of these different threads are all oriented around the same theme, and they're all in service of the same ideas. And that just makes it all hang together and converge, and like you just get it as you're watching it, right? It doesn't feel complex. It actually feels very, very tight, well-paced, fast-paced. But like you don't realize you're being hit with all these different minor things, but they're all weaving together. That's why you don't feel that way.
Yeah, and to make a comparison to another thing that I have declared an anime, and therefore it is, it's not even that it needs to be simple all over. It's that it needs to start simple, and then the world needs to expand out. And I think that's one thing Avatar did very well as well. Yeah. That we start off small in scope and simple, and once we've gotten to know our characters, we can add elements to the world. We can expand our understanding, and that's exactly what Mob Psycho does. Is that we are adding different elements, we're adding different rules and understandings on how these things work. Like we're crumbling them out to where it adds complexity as we go. So we're comfortable with the world as we understand it after the first episode, and then you can complicate it a little bit, but you're still holding true to your characters, and you're still holding true to the themes, like you said, and that allows that complexity to not feel overwhelming. Whereas I feel like sometimes, like even in like Death Note, I just feel like they just threw all the stuff at you like immediately, and just I feel like just anime does that a lot. The anime that I've watched is just like, here's this whole super complicated thing, go understand it all, understand all the characters, or be left behind. And I did not feel that here.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think even in a micro sense, I thought it was very interesting that they started the first episode with following Reigen around, and Mob is almost like an afterthought, right? He's invited. Yeah. He's invited in, and he's such a small presence. Like, doesn't the show actually say like, oh, and yet he's the protagonist of this anime?
It does. Yes, it does.
Which is hilarious because like the way he enters is the most anticlimactic thing ever. And that's the whole point, is like he is utterly anticlimactic.
Yeah.
So
by design,
I like that idea. I mean, I'm thinking about Death Note. I can't remember the first episodes that well, but it definitely delights in just dumping all these like complicated rules on you, like you're learning all the rules to Magic the Gathering in like one sitting, and you're just I can't. Yeah.
And I totally get that there is a type of person out there that loves that shit, right? That they love just being thrown into the world, into the deep end, and figure this shit out. But I kind of want to be. I want to be comforted and cradled into my world, Matt. I would just slow roll me into this world, and I think this does a really good job of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that I don't actually remember at what point I started caring about Mob, because he is such a, like, superficially, he's such a boring, uninteresting character. But like pretty quickly, you start to care about his plight. It's just interesting how well that works on me, because I think I've complained before about like, oh, you can't do animation, or you can't convey human emotion very well in animation, and that's one of the limitations of animation. And I mean, that's sort of just obviously true, because there's just a lot more kind of detail to a live action human face. But
I think it depends on the type of animation. I think it's possible. I think to me, anime in particular struggles with that.
Yeah, because it's so stylized, I think. But the thing was, like, Mob, not only is he anime, but he is remarkably emotionless, and yet just the way the storytelling is done, it still conveys all of this inner turmoil very successfully.
Yeah.
Through his decisions, I think is the reason that works. Like little things like, you think he's just going to fall into being in the telepathy club because people are asking him to, and he seems like a pushover. And then he decides to join the body improvement club, which is my favorite element that I laughed every single time.
Oh my God, it's so funny.
The middle school body improvement club, where presumably these kids are, 11, 12 years old.
They look like 25.
They're just Adonises. So good. I love it.
It's so great. It's so great. Yeah, I know. I totally agree with you. And I think one of the things this show does is it kind of sneaks up on you in that way, in that, especially through, like, let's say the first 4 episodes. I'm not sure if that's exactly it, because I don't remember exactly what happens in which episode, but through the early part of the season, it's just kind of a joke. Like, you have this thing, and like even the first couple episodes hit the repeated beat of Reigen gets Mob into some situation because he's lying, and then he has to like invent a reason why he can't get him out of it, and why Mob has to be the one to get him out of it. And that's kind of the structure of at least the first 2 episodes, I think.
Yeah.
And so it's just kind of, the show just seems like, oh, this is just a funny joke. Like, this whole show is just a funny joke, and it's very like fourth wall breaking and referential, and you have the whole thing with Reigen's all his special moves that are just like, this is the one where Reigen covers salt on his hands and then punches people in the face,
right.
And it's just absurd. And the show's just kind of a joke. And then I think right about the time where he joins the Body Improvement Club, you realize you care, and I don't think you saw that happening. And I think that's a really smart move, showing Mob make that choice, because that's one of his defining characteristics, is this idea that his powers are seen as a burden, not a power, not something that exemplifies him, but actually something that he doesn't want and doesn't feel like he should take advantage of to get anywhere, that he wants to do it a different way. Like, he's a guy that can lift things with his mind, that chooses to lift weights.
Right.
And that's a very important character defining thing that is endearing, I think.
Absolutely. And it's very relatable. Like, I love this as a theme. I absolutely think this is a fantastic message for this show. Like, and you can very easily see what he's doing, like what the point is. Like you can imagine some kid, or even yourself, maybe. I don't know. Like, everyone has their thing, right? Where like maybe you're the best artist in your class or whatever, the best at drawing, or maybe you're the second best, right? And the kid who's the best, and if they're just kind of quote unquote naturally talented at it, they might feel some pride in it, but they might really want to be, the smartest kid in the class. But the kid who's the second best artist is going to just like fume and obsess about the idea that they're not the best artist. And people just, this whole idea that people fixate on certain things as defining them. And if you're really good at that thing, that can destroy you. If you're not really good at that thing, that can also destroy you. It's just bad to define yourself by like a talent, I think, is the point. It's basically what Reigen says at the end, where he's lecturing the scars and just kind of makes them look ridiculous, because he's like, you're dressing up in these costumes, and you've like gone into this whole fantasy world where all that matters is your talent at this one thing, and that's just not the way the world works. And you're like, yeah, this is a good message. Like, this really applies to everyone, because everyone can get a bit of an ego So
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, totally agree.
Cool.
So let's talk about the animation a little bit
Yeah.
before we get further into the plot, because I do think this is when I'm ticking off my the ways in which anime annoys me check boxes and why it didn't check this one. We've talked about this before. One of my things with animation is kind of how flat and static it is, how it's a lot of still images that just like intense dialogue is layered over in they're taking the manga and just, you know, throwing it on screen and then moving the characters a little bit and recording dialogue. Not this show at all. First of all, the style of the show looks very different from a lot of the anime I've seen. Just like the art style in general is very different looking, but it also it feels constantly dynamic to me. It feels like things are constantly moving, constantly changing. The styles are shifting. Like when it goes into a close up, it doesn't just zoom the camera in close on the character's face. He will be drawn in a different style. He will look completely different. And this happens a lot throughout the show, and it just felt consistently dynamic to me. I mean, there's definitely moments where like when it gets really, really into like the Dragon Ball Z-esque psychic fighting, where I was just like, okay, I get it. Okay.
Right.
Like, yeah, they're just big explosions, and then dust is gonna go up in the air, and then it's gonna dissipate, and the character's gonna be standing there, and you're gonna go, oh.
Right.
That stuff still annoyed me, but you know, throughout most of the story, and especially the most emotionally dramatic moments, I felt the animation was alive and dynamic and vibrant and always interesting.
Yeah, it's making smart cuts between characters and showing their faces emoting in ways that make sense in my brain. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, I almost wonder, I don't know quite how to phrase this, but like, I think you and I are both not super keen on the sort of shorthand for expressing emotion in anime, where like
the bubble, like the things that appear on the heads, and
that
falling down, and I hate all
that stuff. I do too. And this story, like, it doesn't do. I don't know if it's even correct to say it doesn't do that stuff. It's more like
it's there. It's definitely there.
I think it's more like the people who are drawing it, or the person who's drawing. I don't know how the artistic process works exactly, but they understand why and where you do those things so that they achieve the desired purpose. And so they didn't bother me in this show. They didn't bother me at all. It's just a matter of like being an artist and knowing the use of all the tools, right? And
sure.
I think maybe some of the animes that we've watched have just been using it because that's what other people use, whereas this one it's using it when and only when it works. I don't know. Yeah. I can't define what exactly that means. Like how do they know when it would work? I think part of it is knowing when to be funny and when not to be funny. But there's a lot more to it than that, I think.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with any of that. I also couldn't like describe what is a right moment to do that and what isn't. I think just so many times, like you said, it's used as just like shorthand to get to establish an emotion, right? It's like we want to show that the character feels this way. How do we do it? We'll just put like a little thing on his head, and then everyone will know. And that just feels to me like, come on, you gotta try a little bit. And I feel like every moment of real emotion, whether it be exasperation, whether it be sadness, whether it be anger, I think is reinforced via the animation and in other ways as well. If they use those things, it's not just doing it that way. And I think maybe that's the difference.
Yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense. So you mentioned kind of the DBZ fights a minute ago. And I think that's another place where the story makes the right choices is it's got a bunch of big old DBZ battles and exploding buildings and smashing people into walls and stuff. But every one of them is set up in a way where a slightly different thing is at stake, and the stakes are escalating in interesting ways each time. Like at first, what's really at stake is that Mob says he's not going to use his powers against a person, right? It's not who's going to win this fight. Is Mob going to gonna get out of this with his principles. And then later on, it becomes more complex when his brother becomes involved, and it's like, okay, well, is his brother is he going to be able to, redeem his brother or some variant of that, or is he going to be able to save his brother from the bad guys?
Yeah, I would say that in this show, the stakes are almost never, if not completely never, is our character going to win the fight?
Yeah.
Because I think in just about every single one of these fights, it's never close. It's imbalanced one way or another, right?
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, normally you would say, well, that's terrible. That's a terrible story decision. There's no stakes. There's no dramatic way to any of the fighting. But just like you said, it takes the time to establish those stakes as different things. So yes, Mob is the most powerful character in this show. He basically, with an exception or two, doesn't lose when allowed to go to his full potential. But the stakes are that's not a good thing. Him betraying this type of person he wants to be and the type of person Reigen wants him to be to win is bad. So yeah, I totally agree with you.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
What?
Nothing. I just didn't have anything to say.
I thought your was, I disagreed with something you said there.
No, I felt like I had a thing to say, and then it just was like not there when I reached for it.
Well, that happens.
Yeah.
Just like psychic powers.
Yes.
When you're trying to bend spoons. Which I think is a good way to bridge the gap to Mob's brother.
Yeah.
Whose name I am blanking on right now. Let me pull up my sheet.
Yes, I did not commit any of these names to memory. But that, I mean, I think that was one of the... Ritsu. Yeah. That was definitely one of the things that sort of pulls into focus this theme of becoming obsessive about some particular skill or talent, and just how that can mess with you.
Yeah, and I mean, without getting too personal in your life, you have a younger brother who, at least during a lot of your childhood, I think it'd be fair to say, looked up to you quite a bit, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And so I would be surprised if you didn't find some sort of specific personal relation to this this sibling relationship between these two characters.
Yeah, definitely.
Besides the psychic stuff.
I mean, I definitely related to like Mob's just, being protective of and loving toward his brother. We didn't really have a thing where my brother tried to kill me because he had grown beyond me or something like that. Remains to be seen. We're not there yet. But yeah, I definitely felt a lot of connection with that. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think, as you said, there's this natural, like, I mean, I don't have brothers. I did have sisters though. And there was, an unstated kind of rivalry between me and my older sister as far as the things we were very good at, which for the two of us happened to be school. And Cindy was always better than me at school. Always. And there's like this inherent, it's a complex mix of, because you love your family, they're your family. It's jealousy, it's love. It's like woe is me. Why was I not blessed with the natural intelligence that she has, or in this case, the natural psychic powers? I mean, you're absolutely right that one of the great things about all these different threads is how they tie up into the central theme of the power as a metaphor for talent, for skill, for like just abilities that someone is blessed with, and how they live their life based on this central understanding. And I think nothing ties into that more than this sibling relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. I think my brother was sufficiently younger than me that we were never actually rivals, but yeah, I think Mob and his brother are supposed to be closer together in age.
Yeah, like 1 or 2 years, I think.
Yeah, I think so. But like the subplot of his brother basically starting to frame the kids they wanted to get rid of. I mean, it was the other kid who was spearheading it, but his brother went along with it. I thought that was really interesting, right? Like, there's really nothing comedy about that. It's pretty, is dark the right word? Like it's a totally realistic kind of fucked up thing that you could imagine middle schoolers doing. and it like eating him up inside. Like, I think that this is kind of what I mean when I say how psychologically realistic and relatable it is like, yeah, there's absolutely nothing fantastical or unrealistic about this idea that they framed the kids they wanted to get rid of, and then it tortured him so much that he triggered and got psychic powers, basically.
Yeah.
And it also broke the other kid too.
Yeah, it is an interesting kind of like micro commentary on kind of classism as well, right? Because they are the good students, and they're targeting the delinquent kids based on their definition, which rapidly expands to basically anyone they don't like. And it's interesting social commentary just on its own level, but yeah, it also ties into his increasing, like, he wants to feel powerful, he wants to feel important, and so he hitches his wagon to this idea, even though he fully realizes how terrible and cruel it is. But it provides him an outlet to make him feel the way he assumes his brother feels all the time. And the great irony of this whole thing is that he wants this power his brother has so bad, and his brother doesn't want it at all. Is not only doesn't want it, but like hates it. Yeah. And I thought that's fascinating.
I feel like interesting that I don't know if I've quite clicked until just now that like the idea of feeling really powerless in middle school is pretty ubiquitous. Like I definitely,
yeah.
I definitely felt like that was, in terms of powerlessness, that was the worst time in my life. And I probably spent more time like fantasizing about like being powerful or being a superhero or whatever, whatever movies were in vogue at the time. I would definitely like fantasize that I was that guy, and then I would beat up all the bullies or whatever. Because that's a point in your life where like you're old enough to be sensitive to how powerless you are, actually. Obviously, when you were younger than middle school, you were even more powerless because you were a baby, basically. Sure. But in middle school, you start to understand how kind of denigrated you are by everything around you. That you're usually in kind of a phase of school where you're given almost no independence. But you have enough wit to want that.
I think middle school is where you have developed enough to know, to understand what you don't have. Whereas I think elementary school and younger, you kind of just are not, you don't understand enough about the world to be cognizant of how little power you have. But middle school, is that weird literally middle time where you're like, oh, I'm starting to understand how the world works, and I understand that I have zero control over it. That's terrifying.
Yeah. And that's why it's perfect to give Mob this incredible psychic power that he could almost do anything with, right? And it doesn't give him a feeling of power. And I think that's great. And basically what Reigen says at the end is like, you can't define yourself this way. You can't define yourself via power. You have to have, relationships with people that are not about power. Yeah. And I'm like, wow, he doesn't literally say that, but that's kind of what I take away from it. And I think that's really, really awesome.
Yeah. And I think that's a great transition. Let's talk about Reigen for a little while. Yeah. I want to just talk to me about this character, Matt, because I want to understand how you think they did this with this character, who is, for all intents and purposes, the comedic relief joke character through much of the story. And then suddenly the last couple episodes, it kind of betrays what we maybe understood about him the whole time, which is that actually he's got a lot of knowledge to impart and understanding of the world, in that it is perfect to me that he is mentoring Mob in psychic powers, quote unquote, but he's a fraud. He doesn't really have any powers. So it turns out what he's actually mentoring him in is just like knowledge of the world.
Yeah.
And I think that's a perfect kind of like Trojan horse emotional beat thing that just they snuck in there without you realizing it until it pays off in the end.
Yeah, it works beautifully because just like you said, if you take things at face value, he's a joke. But when you actually like think back on it and think about the things that he does throughout the story, it's really just a lot of demonstrations of him being resourceful and clever and thinking on his feet.
Yeah.
And he is kind of foolish in the sense that he never realizes the trouble that he's getting into.
Right.
but also like he's genuinely helping people. Like the people who come to him, it would be one thing if he was like conning them out of their money and then not helping them.
Sure.
But in most cases, he probably is getting paid more than he deserves, but then he's like giving them a delightful massage or whatever, and then they're and then they feel better and they leave cured of the problem that they thought they had, and all is right in the world, right? So it's like basically in the same way that somebody comes in with a possession and he gives them a massage, you come in thinking that this is going to be a story about psychic powers and punching, and you get a lesson on growing up.
Damn. Look at you go. You just metaphored the shit out of that. Well done.
It really is a great character, right? And it is funny how like you just did not see it coming. And the moment when he transfers his power to him, you're like, no story has ever earned the victory lap as much as Reigen thrashing everyone is about to be earned.
Yeah. Well, and what I love about it is like the narrator is the one that tells us that happened, right?
Yeah.
We see Reigen doing all this stuff and we're like, no way no way. And all the characters are kind of doing that too, where Mob, who by this point is kind of maybe starting to suspect that his boss isn't all on the up and up, and he's like, oh, I guess he is really powerful. But they figure it out eventually, and Reigen definitely figures it out eventually, and even with the understanding of where the power came from, he's so indifferent to it. Like he's just like using it to talk these people down and to stop them. He's not like there's no point in the plot of the story where you see the power go to Reigen's head and him like going like nuts with the power he's been granted by Mob and like trying to set things up to where, oh, actually I'm gonna use Mob. I'm going to make him do this all the time now so I can feel like I have this power. In fact, like the concept of seeking out psychic powers for people who aren't blessed with it is generally considered by the show as a bad thing. And everyone that tries to do it is either a bad guy or is specifically scolded by the show for lusting for power in that kind of way.
Right. Like his brother, it hurts him generally, the fact that he has taken this path.
Yeah. But yeah, I just like that it didn't, like, I would expect, and this is my anime bias coming through, but I would expect that in a lot of the animes that I've seen, if them to do that, oh, Mob blows up and his power doesn't hit him, it actually goes to Reigen, that we would do like the corruption of power storyline.
Yeah.
And I was so happy. I was so pleasantly surprised and happy that the story did not do that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And like when Reigen gets slashed with the sword, my trope brain is like, okay, Reigen gets slashed and then Mob's going to go crazy and beat everybody because that's how this kind of story goes. But like it's so much more fun that it's not just I think I already basically said this, but like the idea that like a moment of understanding and connection gives him the ability to not only transfer his power to Reigen, but like amplify it 1,000-fold or whatever. It's like, like that's the point. That's the point of this whole story, actually, is that connections with people are so much more important than your power level or whatever. Yeah. And are literally more powerful.
Yeah. Like literally by the structure of the story, which we haven't actually talked about the Mob's explosion percentage structure. Yeah. Which I found kind of delightful. Because it's just a very easy way of like tracking. It's like a fun way of tracking a character's emotion, but it's also a fun way of tracking tension. I mean, we were talking on We've Got Ward a couple weeks ago how the chapter basically does that exact same thing with a percentage of something really bad is going to happen thing, and that's basically what this is doing here. But I think that the explosion to 100 and actually going to 1,000, you're absolutely right, is so thematically satisfying on every single level. It just makes you understand exactly what what the show wants you to understand in that moment. And that's like, I hate to be using this good anime to shit on other animes, and I feel like I'm doing that a lot. So I apologize to everyone that likes anime. I don't want to hurt your feelings or anything, but I feel like one of the things that I've always struggled with in a lot of the anime we watched is to get what they're trying to do here. Like what is the theme that they're trying to explore here has been something that I think the show has been layered in so much style and so much anime-iness that it wasn't clear to me. And one thing I'll say about this thing is what they were trying to do and how they were trying to do it always felt clear to me. And I think that, to me, when I feel that to me is good storytelling.
Yeah. I mean, I'll give a backhanded compliment to like Naruto and say like the first, 20 episodes or something of that do a pretty good job at being clear with the theme they're trying to convey. It's just that then they spend like 1,000 more episodes rehashing the same exact thing.
Sure. Yeah.
With different characters over and over and over and over. And like, that's one thing I noticed while watching this is I was like expecting to get bored with the mob hulks out thing. Like, okay, he reaches 100 and then he goes apeshit. But like every time that happens, the consequence is a bit different. Like,
sure, yeah.
Like it's not just about like, okay, Goku is going to smash the guy now. It's he does something he regrets, or he does it, but then it doesn't work quite. It doesn't actually work that well, or he does it and it's out of sadness, and he actually undoes the thing that he did before, or something. Like it's always interesting and fresh, and really just overall like a pretty tight 12 episodes. Which is, I don't know, a strange thing for me to say. Like I normally am like, okay, this is, I feel like a bunch of the TV series that we've covered recently, I've been like, this didn't need to be this long. This could have been tightened up. This was one where I was like, I don't really know what you would have cut. This is 12 30-minute episodes, but it felt very tight. Everything felt right where it was,
Yeah, I totally agree.
I think the part that I liked the least was the part with the scars in the latter third. But I don't necessarily know what I would cut out of it.
I definitely liked the payoff, but I agree the setup to a lot of the scar stuff went on quite a bit, and it was one of those moments where I felt myself falling back into the anime stuff when I'm just like, okay, there's those people and they all have scar. I get it. And then we just kind of went on with them for a little bit.
Yeah, it seems like maybe there were just slightly too many of them,
sure,
and you just didn't. It's just like, okay, we have to fight this guy now. Okay, we're gonna beat this guy.
We're gonna fight this guy. He's gonna be like super confident. We're gonna beat him, and he's gonna be like, "That's impossible."
Yeah. Right.
I felt like we did that like 5 times.
Right, I think we did. and then maybe the one thing in the show that at this point strikes me as a bit of an off note is the other kid that shows up at the end who's clearly at least as powerful as Mob.
Sure.
And then he just kind of disappears, and you're like, okay,
the son of the leader of Claw, I guess. It's just blatant setup for
more stuff.
The next thing.
Right. And that to me felt like I don't know if we're doing anything interesting here, or if this is just literally this is the antagonist for the next thing.
It didn't feel like it didn't feel like it was explored enough to really tie into anything.
It's not like it ruined anything for me. I was just like,
no, it's so small, but yeah.
Yeah, it was more. It's more like when the show is having this much fun with tropes and subverting your expectations in fun ways, and then it just seems to be using a trope in a very straightforward way. You're almost thrown off. Like, where's the fun?
Right. Where's
the fun riff on this trope? It's just okay, whatever.
And I think that's a trap that a lot of stuff like this can fall into when you're so deep into the tropes in a way to kind of comment on them that you're just doing them. Like at some point you're just doing them, and like that stops being clever at some point. It's just like, actually no, I'm just just doing the tropey thing.
Yeah, which can also be fine in my opinion, but
it can. I mean, it's all about execution.
Yeah.
I think this show manages to skirt that problem. I think it comes close to the line a few times, but it manages to skirt around it pretty effectively for me. And I think a lot of it has to do with its sense of humor, which is just I have not found very many anime funny, really, ever. I thought this was hilarious.
Absolutely.
And I'm trying to understand exactly why the humor in this worked in a way that it didn't in other stuff. I mean, I think part of that is the English dub voice cast, I think, is actually
perfect.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good. And I think that's something that I have not experienced in a lot of anime. Like I said, on a lot of other stuff, I try to I usually listen to a dubbed. I try to watch one episode subtitled. I tried to do that with this, Matt. I just think the English is so good that you should just watch it like that.
Yeah. I didn't think about this beforehand, so I'm freestyling here, but I think
sure.
A big part of it is that a lot of the comedy is basically situational humor. It's not just a funny gag. It definitely has a lot of the funny gags, like we were talking about. Every single time Reigen does one of his special moves, it's a hilarious, just one-off, like just the delivery of it and the whole framing of it, but
the timing of it is so good.
The timing of it. I mean, it's basically set up, payoff type jokes because
sure.
You expect him to be like every single time he sets it up like he's going to do something really interesting and impressive, and then he just does something ridiculous like punch someone in the face unexpectedly, or just like similarly sort of crass way of surprising, right? That's the key of humor, is to be surprising. But that's not all the jokes. A lot of the jokes are just basically like sitcom humor of just like we've got these characters in this situation, and some of them are kind of weird, and they play off of each other, and the situation becomes funnier. Like, I don't know, like little tiny things like when the Scar security guys are in their, their break room or whatever, and then there's like the one of them who's been there the longest, and he's giving his like speech about what it's like to work there, and I don't know, I can't say why that's funny. It's just like a situation. It's not even like you're not even laughing, you're just like smiling at it because it's like, this is goofy, and I love it.
Yeah, I mean, I think just the fact that the show took the time to explore like the inner lives of the hench people that don't matter, I think is just kind of inherently humorous on its own.
Yes. Because
I mean, and I think it ties into the themes again. I think this is one of the things that the show does so well, because these characters don't matter. They're just kind of played for a joke, but also they're people that are working for this organization because they are desperate for psychic power, and they think they have been promised that they're going to get it. You bide your time with us, and we're going to get it. We're going to give it to you, and it's a lie. It's not true. And so it manages to also comment on the central theme at the same time as just being funny.
That's a great point. Yeah, I mean, basically, this show is kind of a masterclass in having everything tie into one central idea. And like, I mean, it's really funny that you say that, because like it didn't occur to me that showing the henchmen and their obsession was also part of it too. But like, what isn't, right?
right.
Even the telepathy club is a bunch of kids who are obsessed with the idea that they're going to become espers. Or
find aliens.
Or just something fantastic and beyond their current boring lives. And the show yet again doesn't give them any of that, right? Like they're constantly frustrated, and it is interesting that like the Body Improvement Club is actually kind of held. I would say they don't get dumped on as much as most of the other people, and maybe it has something to do with the fact that they are actively working on themselves. They're not just kind of like angrily like wishing for something to happen. They're working on their bodies, and that's
they're not taking any shortcuts.
I like that.
I mean, you can remove the body from the Body Improvement Club and just call them the Self Improvement Club, and then just build this idea that they are the only characters, not the only characters, that's not fair, but they are a few characters in the story that are interested in just the traditional put in the work and see the reward type of improvement, like people. So
now that I'm thinking about it, I realize the show is actually very positively disposed toward the body improvement club guys, because like those like giant muscle men are usually bullies.
Yeah.
And you kind of expect them to be bullies. But then not only are they like, especially when it's like, oh, we're going to kick you out of this room, telepathy club. And then the body improvement kids are like, no, you can stay in the room. We just want to keep our weights here. And like, they're like unfailingly polite and generous. And like
they welcome Mob into the group with like no questions asked. They don't really tease him or punish him for his lack of fitness. They're just encouraging and like because they respect him because he's trying. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Like this is like the most well regarded, and I don't think it has anything to do with like the show is like looking at like look how important physical prowess is. I don't think that's what it's about. I think that's a metaphor for just the idea that the show is trying to sell you that working towards your power is better than trying to take a shortcut.
Yeah, sure. And maybe working with people too is part of that too. But yeah, I think I definitely agree that putting in the grinding unpleasant work is a salutatory, what is the word? A good thing.
Yes. Yes. So in that regard, we can't not talk about Dimple because he's the Slimer of the show. And I knew I was going to love the show when I realized it had its own Slimer. For those of you that don't know what I'm talking about the real Ghostbusters, the cartoon I watched many, many times as a child, where they took the Slimer character from the Ghostbusters movie and just made him like the friendly sidekick of the Ghostbusters for some reason. But I loved it. And that's like, they had to, like, he's green. Like, they had to have been doing that on purpose, right?
He's
like
green,
that has
he's
to
a blob, he's got arms but no legs. He's totally Slimer.
He's literally a ghost.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in that regard, the thing I want to ask you, because I'm asking this question because I'm just not quite sure how it all pieces together. How does Dimple fit into this idea that we've been talking about, this idea of the power of community and the power of and the rejection of the easy route type of stuff?
I mean, I haven't thought about this at all, but I mean,
let's do it. Let's do it live.
Yeah, I mean, he was the ghost who was running the LOL cult, right? And, he wanted to take over the world, and he wanted to be powerful, and he was going to do it by basically mentally enslaving or brainwashing the whole world. That was his plan, actually.
Yep.
And then Mob like breaks his power and makes him just kind of this little wisp of a spirit, and then he. I mean, what is he genuine in his kind of being reformed? He seems to be.
I don't know. He does seem to be. I mean, like we get this idea early on that he's like just waiting to possess Mob, and then eventually does literally possess Ritsu, but not in the same way. I mean, when I look at like the themes that you've been talking about this whole episode, I look at as him being like the key that unlocks Ritsu's powers. And so that again is talking about, you know, this idea of community, this idea of cooperation is key to making that power, because I think the show makes it pretty clear that Ritsu would not have gotten his power or to the level he did without Dimple's assistance. I think
that makes sense. Yeah. I mean, he definitely not as fast, maybe.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, because at that point in the story, it seems like Dimple is a negative influence on Ritsu. Like he's pushing him. He's basically making him more power hungry and feeding that part of him that is power hungry. And it's interesting. I feel like I need to watch it again now because I'm having trouble remembering exactly at what point you stop seeing Dimple as like a background antagonist who's going to stab them in the back and start seeing him as being on side, as our Australian friends would say.
I think it's very late in the show, if at all. Like, I think that's always kind of in the back of your mind. I mean, there's several times throughout even the last few episodes where you're like, is this it? Is this the moment he's going to seize upon something? And I think even Mob says in like the second to last episode, like, no, he's definitely evil.
Yeah.
He's definitely evil. But he's complex, and I think that's why he's interesting.
Yeah, I think it's way
Slimer.
more. Exactly. I think it's way more fun that he be like the Slimer, because Slimer in the Ghostbusters is this puckish, prankster, and he's not just like simply on the Ghostbusters side. In fact, it's never clear why they keep him around.
Because he's, the
just,
kids love him.
It's just Slimer, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that is very true here as well. Like he could easily be exorcised, but he's not.
Yeah. The blonde kid like sort of did do that, and then he came back or something.
Yeah, that's the one moment that I wasn't quite clear on.
I think maybe
it's just they just kind of. I felt like the show was just like, we don't actually want to. We actually want to.
We want to bring the Slimer
get
back.
rid of him. Yeah.
That didn't bother me, but I definitely was like, oh, okay. But I guess I also wasn't surprised that he came back. I was more surprised that they killed him in the first place, because I was like,
I was too.
That's the cute comic relief sidekick ghost.
Yeah, you don't kill that person.
Yeah,
you don't do that. Yeah. So yeah, I was not surprised when he came back, but I felt like they just fast forwarded to it and didn't really earn it. And I would have been just. I think it would have worked just as fine if they just didn't have that happen. Is him dying one of the things that triggers Mob? I can't remember.
Well, it's during the big fight. I think it adds up to his freak out level, but I don't remember exactly. Can we talk about the blonde kid's hair?
Taruki, I think his name is.
Yeah.
Oh my God. What a hilarious idea.
just like the fact that it's just, he just comes back with the hair that way and doesn't really get commented on as far as I remember. And then it just stays that way for most of the show, most of the series, actually, with no one ever commenting on it.
The very last episode.
Yeah. I think maybe someone does comment on it eventually, then it finally gets cut off.
So it's like, I mean, it's such an overcompensation.
Yeah.
It's hilarious. Like,
right.
He gets the top of his head sliced off, and his compensation for that is like 2 feet tall hair.
Yeah.
Oh my God. It's Marge Simpson hair.
Right. And like otherwise he is drawn as if he's still cool. I don't know why it's so funny to me. It's so hilarious, this idea that like, because like he's the cool kid. Mm-hmm. He's the cool kid who has psychic powers and uses them to amplify his coolness.
Yeah.
And then he loses his confidence, and then he just looks like a ridiculous clown, but he's still drawn as if he's cool other than the hair. I don't know why it's so funny. It's so good.
Yeah, and I mean, besides the jokey part of his character, I think he's cool too, because he's literally a character that was transformed via his interactions with Mob. Like, he was exactly what the antagonists of the story were at the beginning, where he was one of the people that thought that espers were just better than people. Like, we, a class above normal people. And I think my interpretation by the end of the show is he is kind of not, he doesn't believe that anymore. He's been changed in this interaction with Mob and his brother to understand the value in people that's beyond just what they can lift with their mind.
Yeah, I think so. I buy that. I thought even after Mob defeated him the first time, he was like genuinely like, it was so humbling to him to not be the biggest fish in the pond. That he kind of reevaluated why he was getting so much of his validation out of this thing, and it just kind of humbled him, and like that's I like that character a lot, because it's sort of showing you almost by like example, hey, maybe you are arrogant, maybe you are the biggest fish in your pond, but it doesn't have to destroy you and be absolutely devastating for you to run up against somebody who's better. Like, it probably will hurt. It probably will hurt at that moment, but the end result is that you just have a lot less ego wrapped up in that thing, and it doesn't mean
Yeah.
you're any less good at what you were doing.
I like that because I think that's a powerful lesson about growing up,
Yeah.
because especially, going from middle school to high school, going from high school to college. I think one of the things I think you're told over and over again, or stories have covered a lot, is this idea that you might have been the best in your school, but high school is a combination of a bunch of schools. College is a combination of a bunch of high schools. Like this idea that you need to understand that even if you're the best at something at your school, you're eventually going to come across someone that's better at it, and dealing with that and realizing that and becoming okay with it is, I think, an important part of growing up, especially if you do have some sort of innate talent that you were gifted. There's always going to be someone better, always.
Yeah. It can be crippling, I think, to in all kinds of ways. Like, I don't know, I'm remembering the story about like a chess master goes and visits this kid, and like his family like knows that this kid is so good at chess and beats everyone at chess, and then the kid avoids playing chess against the chess master as much as like 100% because they know that they would lose, and then they wouldn't be quote unquote the best anymore. And it's like, yeah, but that's because you're already not the best. It's just interesting how we kind of tie ourselves into knots to preserve this kind of ego thing with skills. Yeah.
And I think maybe this is stretching, maybe not, but I think the leader of the Claw's 7th Division, the girl who ends up being an old man, is kind of, to me, an extrapolation of that idea of not dealing with it.
Yeah.
He seems like the type of person who specifically never was able to deal with the idea that someone was more powerful than him.
Absolutely.
And so he kind of creates this persona that is, the young girl, presumably middle school aged, who is the best at everything. And this fake persona to try to capture this moment where I was the best at everything, and it's fake. It's bullshit. It's not real.
Yeah.
And that's literally not dealing.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Like both the idea that it is an old man and that they are seemingly pretending to be a young person to kind of hold on to that. That's really interesting. Yeah, I hadn't considered that. I mean, man, if that's true, like that is so clever and like
Isn't it?
detail oriented, right?
Yeah.
Like I mean, everything really is detail oriented. Like even like the stupid shoulder pads on the one guy, you're like, oh, that's just stupid. And then Reigen specifically makes fun of them, and it's like, like every touch in this is.
Oh my God, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Why are you wearing these shoulder pads? They protect my shoulders. No, they don't.
I mean, you can even say like the scar. They all take a scar on their face, a disfiguring scar on their face, as a marker of their membership in this hierarchy of what's the word, like lionizing this idea of the S powers, and then the most important thing being this defining trait about me is the most important thing, and I'm so good at it, and I'm better than everyone, and it's disfiguring. It's a wound.
Yeah, and they wear it with pride.
Yeah.
They're usually all on their face, right?
Yeah, they're
and very few of them cover their face.
Yeah, it's like they're delusional because they're proud of this scar that they have, that someone has cut their face and they're proud of it. Yeah, that's awesome.
I love it.
It's genius.
The thing I want to leave with, the last thing that I truly loved about this series is the end. So the very, very end, which is basically almost the beginning again. So we have Mob and his brother back at the dinner table with their parents, who are just like completely non-entities in this story.
Yeah.
Which I think is kind of funny on its own right. But so, I mean, one of the beats we've seen hit over and over again throughout the story is this comedy beat about how every time Mob lifts a spoon to his mouth to take a bite of something, his powers bend the spoon and it makes a mess, and it's really frustrating. And his brother has always been the guy who swoops in, bends the spoon back, and gives it to him. And that's like their cooperative symbiotic relationship there. And what I love about how this season ends is that beat is hit again. And of course, this time when he bends the spoon back, he does it with his powers. But it shows to me that even though his brother has developed powers and has these is a powerful Esper in himself, the fundamental relationship between the brothers has not changed. It is a visual way of depicting that their relationship, their closeness, their bond with each other will remain the exact way it is. They serve the same purpose to each other. And I just think that's just good storytelling. The way to express that, and I've talked so much about how many damn animes just like say what they want it to be about. They just say it. They just have their characters explain the themes to each other as they're talking while standing like badassly looking at each other. And the fact that this showed like one of the part of the coda of the season is just something that kind of goes unsaid, but is just shown, I thought was beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of the story is show don't tell, actually.
Yeah. I will say there's still definitely some dialogue that I'm just like, yikes.
See,
it's just like
yeah, I think I could probably name a couple scenes, but I don't even know if I love the fact that Reigen is basically telling you the entire theme at the end while he's kicking everyone's ass. Like that's one moment where I'm like, no, this was earned. You get to do this now.
I agree with that.
Maybe like earlier when he's fighting the blonde kid, it's a little bit less, a little bit more like overtly tropey, but yeah, like that's the thing is like, it's all so well put together that I don't really think that I would have any like firm statements of like, oh yeah, they shouldn't have done it this way. They should have pulled back here or there or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sitting here specifically remembering moments in which it really bugged me, but I could not name them for you. So, I mean, take that for what it is. Like, I can't think of specific instances of it, but I do remember just moments where it was like, geez, guys, I just calm down with your explanation dialogue a little bit.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, did you,
few and far between, I think.
Do you agree that it was like well paced and tight and all that stuff that I said earlier?
Yeah, no, I think it's a really, really tight story. I think each scene, each moment builds upon each other, plays off each other in a really great way. It doesn't feel like as much as there are different threads, all those threads you talked about earlier in the show, I think it never feels like we're just like suddenly cutting to the left in a weird way where we're like, wait, what are we doing over here now? It feels like that stuff builds off each other. I mean, it very rapidly makes clear to the viewer what this different thread is doing and how it relates to the overall story. So, I thought it was great.
Awesome.
It was really great.
Cool.
Yeah. I really liked this. I was so surprised. I think we've done a good job of explaining like exactly why this worked for me when a lot of the other things I've seen haven't. I just think this is just good storytelling. It really was.
You think you'd go so far as to recommend this?
I don't know. Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think if you can get past a lot of the anime-iness, which I usually can't, so the fact that I was able to, I think to me is a point for it. So if you don't get too caught up into the anime of it all, I think anyone could enjoy the story.
Yeah, I agree. I'm thinking about the fact that like I've watched a handful of anime, but I guess more than a handful, maybe. I'm not actually sure. I never really sat down and counted. But the point is, I think this is one of the only ones, if not the only one, that I would like get my kids to watch. Maybe not. Yeah, maybe even at this age, because I think they would actually get a lot out of it. Death Note maybe when they're older, but yeah. I guess like it's one of those things where it's definitely dependent on the person by person.
Yeah,
but like I think that it has enough inherent quality to it that you're somebody who like legitimately has issues with this medium and you really, really like this. So like it makes me want to say like anybody would like this, right?
Yeah, I think if you like anime, you will love this.
Yeah.
If you hate anime, you might like this.
Yeah.
And that is the most glowing review I could give in anime.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So here's my question. Here's the question I want to leave you with, though. There's another season of this. Do you want to watch more? Because I'm kind of torn on this.
See, my first impulse is no. It was perfectly wrapped up as it was. And then my second reactive impulse is, but these people, I don't actually know who is behind this and who's responsible for what, but these people clearly understand storytelling. So
Yeah.
Why shouldn't I expect the second season to also be delightful in the same way?
Yeah, that's exactly my thought process. Is this wrapped up perfectly? I'm happy with leaving it the way it is and never returning to it, and seeing it as this perfect specimen, not perfect, as the specimen of good storytelling. But yeah, if someone's so good at storytelling, why would I not want to see them tell more stories?
Right.
You know? So I have not decided. Obviously, we just got a trial to Crunchyroll, so I'm sorry guys, I will be canceling my Crunchyroll free trial before it is up. I'm not going to maintain an active subscription to an anime service. I did not like this that much, but yeah, I mean, if I have time, maybe during the next, I don't know, what we have, like 11 days left on it, 10 days left on it,
Something
maybe.
like
I don't know. I might give it a shot. Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. I don't know how I'm leaning. I'm very conflicted right now.
I mean, the problem is we're very busy, and also there's that new Dark Crystal show on Netflix that I watched the first episode and I'm really into, and I really want to watch that.
Yeah,
So.
and I just started watching The Boys, so
Yeah. All right. Well, that is Mob Psycho 100, a positive review from Matt, and surprisingly from me.
yeah.
All right, guys, that's going to do it for us this week. We just had one thing we wanted to talk about, and we did it. We did that thing. If you have any opinions on Mob Psycho 100, we want to hear what you think. Did you like this show? Do you like anime and didn't like the show? Actually, that's an opinion I really want to hear. If you enjoy anime but didn't like Mob Psycho 100, I want to understand why. I want to learn about you. So you can reach out to us via email at doofmedia@gmail.com or over on our Twitter account @doofmedia. We'd love to hear from you. If you liked it, if you hated it, just want to learn people's experiences. I love talking to people about why they liked or didn't like something.
Yeah. And if you're not already subscribed to this podcast, we encourage you to do so and ensure you never miss an episode. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, and pretty much anywhere else podcasts can be found.
Yeah, and you can find this show and all of our shows on the Doof Media Podcasting Network over at our website, doofmedia.com. Let's talk about Media MD. I don't think that's a show we've talked about very often on the show before. Media MD is I almost said bi-weekly, but
Fortnightly.
I have to say fortnightly.
You have to.
They're Australian. Yeah, our friends at that you put on the Deep Impact show that we've talked about on here before also do a show called Media MD, where each and every fortnight they assign each other some sort of media that the other hasn't seen, and then they call that the prescription, and then they come on and talk about it, and that's the diagnosis. I like that concept a lot. This fortnight's the one that just came out yesterday. If you're listening to this on the day this show comes out, was about the anime. I'm so used to saying anime, Matt. I just say it. The Amazon original series The Boys, which, as you said, you've watched a couple episodes of.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just getting into it. Have you watched the whole season?
I have watched the whole season.
Awesome.
We are going to be doing a whole show on it on our show eventually, because one of our patrons has requested us to watch and talk about that show. It's going to be a little bit of time before that. We have a pretty lengthy backlog, but I thought their conversation was really great. They gave me some interesting ideas and things to think about in my approach to analyzing it. They just do good work. It's really fun to listen to them talk about this kind of stuff.
Yeah, definitely check that out. I really love them. And
unlike us, it's a pretty low time commitment. They do like 35-minute episodes, which I didn't. Did you know you can do that?
I
didn't know you could do that.
We can't.
I thought the laws of podcasting said an hour and 10 minutes, like max.
Yeah, or minimum.
Or min. Yeah, sorry, min.
I don't know. I don't know how they do it. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, but you can see that episode of Media MD, and have they we're slowly, so they brought this podcast over relatively recently, so I think there's only 3 episodes of Media MD on our website right now, but we're slowly working on bringing those over. Or you could just subscribe to Media MD on your podcatcher, just like you've subscribed to the Doofcast, right? Because you've done that already, right?
That's right.
Right?
I'm sure they have, Scott. It's okay. I think our radiation has started to infect them because they're getting a bit longer, but
they are.
Yeah.
Oops. And guys, if you like what we do here and want to support us, want to support Media MD, Deep Impact, Do the Right Thing, or any of the shows we do here on the network, you can become a patron of Doof Media. Head on over to patreon.com/doofmedia and pledge $1 a month or whatever else you can afford to help ensure we keep growing and keep making new stuff. This episode right here, this wonderful treat that we got to watch and talk about for the last hour, is only possible thanks to the support of our patron AzgarZigel. And I just want to thank you, AzgarZigel, for picking an anime that I ended up liking, because I know it's a crapshoot for you guys, and I know I know our patrons are desperately trying to find stuff that I like, and they never know which way it's going to go. But thank you, AzgarZigel. This was a great pick, and I'm glad I got to watch this thing.
Yeah, thank you from me too. This is one where I was just like, oh my God, what is this going to be? I know nothing about this. It looks so strange. And now I'm just so glad that I watched it. Yeah, really appreciate that. So also please consider rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts. Every review on there helps us get more exposure and helps introduce new people to the content that we're making here.
All right, guys, we will be back next week for episode 50. And it's time, Matt. It's time for the long-awaited Deconstructing Shyamalan episode on The Last Airbender.
Can't wait.
As positive as this episode was, I think we're gonna see maybe the opposite. I don't know. I haven't watched it yet. So what if I love it? What if I love it?
I don't think. I think everyone. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
All right. Well, we'll find out right here next week.
My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say. My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say.